Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Your host, the Raven, here, bringing you some more Illusion of Gaia action. We're here in the city of Euro. In this episode, we're going to explore this town a little bit in the first half of, the dealings or what's going on here. We're going to collect the red jewels that are available at this point. And as you can see right now, waiting in line for the hottest store in Euro, which is the Rolex company. It's worth to get in here. There's two ways. You can do the fun way, which I thought was really fun, and I thought it was a nice little touch to the game, is that you can actually stand in line, as the regular way, and just wait your turn until you can, till it's time for you to go in the store. It takes a little bit of time. And I've done it this time, but for the sake of the video, I started recording while I was, already close to the door. So anyways, you come in, the clerk, she mistakes you for Neil, who's the son of the people who own the Rolex company or whatever. So she says, hey, sure, take whatever you like. And I think that's a clever way that explains why Will can take these items without actually having any money, because there's no money in this game. This is like the only RPG that I can remember playing where there's no monetary system. You can get herbs. If you count, unless you count the red jewels, but I don't count those because there's a finite source. It's not like you can go earn red jewels in exchange for more goods or services. There's a finite amount of red jewels that you can find. And if you could trade those in for certain things, but there's no store. You can't buy anything. You can't buy health potions or anything like that. So I think that's pretty unique. So anyway, in that store, you get a life potion. It gives you one extra piece of hit points. And you can see we got this red jewel tucked in the corner here. And you also get the drink that increases Free Dance Dark Fire ability, which will demonstrate the new effect of that later on in the Dungeon of Mt.kress. So anyway, make sure you grab that red jewel in the corner, and also make sure you grab enough apples for Anne, the girl up here in this room, who if you don't, if you talk to her, she'll say she has enough, but if you just keep bringing her apples, eventually she'll say what she's saying now. Why are you always bringing me back with apples? Is it for Kara or is it for me? She thinks you're giving her apples because you like her. So in exchange, boom, she gives you a red jewel. So it's worth it to bring her all the apples or whatever. So that's two red jewels you can get hidden in the city at this point. And also, there's one more which we're going to collect later. First, we're going to stop off here at the jeweler Jim, who's I don't know why, like when you come inside the house, he's just sitting on the table or whatever. But when you're outside, you see like the guy peeping and shaking his head back and forth or whatever. When I first played this as a kid, I thought that was like some, a child playing hide and seek or, acting a fool in their mom's house or whatever, while their parents weren't home. But when you come inside here, it's the jeweler Jim, who's a little bit creepy. I think he's a weird character. So as you can see, there is an exchange, jewels for things, but that's more of a trade than a monetary system or whatever. So anyway, one more point we're gonna hit up. It's a very important thing. Make sure you go up here, and there's two musicians that live in this house, and they argue. When you walk in on them, they're arguing over, I guess, artistic outlook or whatever, artistic theory. And the one you want to talk to is Erasquez. He's the one that when you speak to him, he realizes that you have some kind of special ability or some kind of special quest, which he states. And since you have this ability, he'll mark the next area on your map, which is the mountain temple, Mt.kress. And if you don't, I think that's just like one of the only places where you have to talk to an NPC that isn't a part of the group, or generally doesn't seem to have anything to do with the story. It just seems like a random house NPC in order to progress forward. Like most of the time, one of the main characters will say something like, oh, you need to go do this, or you need to go do that, or somebody gets kidnapped or whatever. there's a really compelling way, but here it's like nobody says anything. It's just like, oh, have fun, explore the city, blah blah blah, and there's no, kind of motive to get the story going or whatever. You just happen to walk in this guy's house and talk to him, and he'll mark the temple on your map. But anyway, if you're watching this video, you don't have to go through that thing of being lost. I mean, you'll know where to go. So anyway, you walk in, talking to that lady in the first house. She says she hears like luggage groaning. You go in here, you overhear a conversation about guys smuggling workers or whatever. So there's some dirty stuff going on, and we're gonna get to the bottom of it. But first, and very important, is to make sure at this point you want to take a trip back to Watermia, because there's a red jewel waiting for you that Lance has. And there's something weird going on with those two. As you remember from the last video, and after the events of the Great Wall of China, Lance falls in love with your companion Lily, and they decide to stay in the village of Watermia so they can, I guess, get all domesticated or whatever. So when you come back here, which I didn't notice this as a kid, but as an adult, I find it really strange that they say they want to chill together, but they're still in the same house that you rented from the fisherman. If you remember, when your crew first arrived at the city, you talk to this guy and he's like, hey, sure, y'all can use my house while I go on a fishing trip. And that guy will be standing outside the house where you could talk to him. He's like, oh, you're welcome, y'all, have fun, make yourselves at home or whatever. So, after the Great Wall of China, you come back, you would think that if they decided to stay together, they'd go to their father's house. Like, why are they still in that house? That's not their house. That's that fisherman's house. And if you notice when you come back, that fisherman isn't there anymore. So I highly doubt that Lance and Lily murdered the guy, but there's a big gap in, the explanation there. Like, what happened? It just seems it's an interesting thing to think about, and it's fun the way that games take, you can see different things as you get older, and I guess you learn more stuff. And because like I said, when I was playing this on Super Nintendo in my youth, I never thought about that. So anyway, it's time for some action. In order to do that, we're gonna head to the Mountain Temple, which I feel is one of the most visually appealing dungeons in the game, probably not the most beautiful dungeons. But with its beauty, it can be very confusing. A lot of the areas look very similar in appearance. There's no kind of defining. Some have defining structures or whatever. Like, one will be all made out of all mushrooms, but a lot of them look exactly like this. It's just green vines with those weird kind of purple mounds or whatever that looks like something. It looks like a level for Street Fighter 2010, which is an even older game. It was on a NES. But anybody who's played that will kind of know what I'm talking about. That weird kind of alien vibe, even though I guess it's just supposed to be like mystic plants. So anyway, enemies. We have 3 types of enemies. One of which we just dealt with, and the second which just made its appearance here. The first one is the blue skulls. They move in S pattern or whatever, kind of like Medusas on Castlevania, which is extremely annoying. I don't like any enemy that makes a little pattern like that, and I especially don't like enemies that travel off screen as they do, because if you don't kill them on their, when they first pass you, then you have to wait for them to, return, and then kill them on the way back, and if you don't do it on the second time, then, just even more waiting. So anyway, then we have the spiders. They have 2 attacks. One is they try to physically walk up to you and damage you through, physical contact. And the second attack is they spit purple acid. If the acid hits you, you take you take some points of damage from that attack. If the acid misses you, if it lands on a walkable path, like one of the green vines or one of the mushroom caps or whatever, it'll become a kind of a standing pool of liquid, which will do damage to you over time. So it's, that can be pretty annoying. And I say there's 3 enemy types because one is just kind of like a color swap of the first enemy. and and that's the golden skull, which we'll encounter here in a little bit. And as usual with all dungeons in Illusion of Gaia, make sure you clear every room, because not only in mt.kress, it's especially important to clear the rooms, because that'll help you. If you get lost, you can know if you've already been to a certain area if there's no enemies. So that's like one of the things you can do. Clearing the enemies will help you, with that confusion. Also, as stated in other videos, clearing all the enemies is crucial to your development. And unlike other RPGs where you can just go out and farm enemies, and level up, gain experience, in Illusion of Gaia, the only way to get experience and to grow is by killing the enemies in each dungeon. So if you miss some or whatever, that's just detrimental to you. So here we have the golden skulls, which I dispatched one already. They just go up and down or side to side, vertically or horizontally until they line up with you. And when they do, they shoot a small blue energy flame out of their eyes, which I believe is blockable by your bow, Will's staff, and well, that's a flute. I keep saying it's a staff, but really it's a flute. But that's a gigantic flute. I mean, anybody who would play a flute that's big enough to be strapped to your back like a sword, I mean, you have to have some impressive lungs, because I'm telling you, that's a gigantic flute. So anyway, staff, flute, whatever. It could be, you could block the energy beams with that. Like most projectiles in Illusion of Gaia can be blocked, not all. And as we get to different areas, I'll point out the ones that can be blocked and the ones that can't. But you'd be surprised what you can block. I mean, there's stuff you would think, well, how can he block that? Just by spinning a flute or a musical instrument or in a circle. But hey, if he can do it, he can do it. But remember, just like in that instance where I was spinning, if it goes underneath that gap right between your feet and the end of the flute, it can still hit your feet and damage you, and the same thing for your head. So I once again clear these enemies, which I'm kind of playing kind of sloppy because with Will, he's not as powerful as Friedan, and a lot of these guys shoot things, or they're kind of like off the path or whatever, either by flying around or some other kind of weird means. So I guess I'm kind of just being kind of reckless. I want to hurry up and get to Friedan. So anyway, to make these jumps, you need Will's spin power in order to hit the green ramps that are on the end of some vines. Some vines you need his spin power, some vines you don't. So anyway, we're here at the Gaia statue. We're going to heal up. We're going to switch to Friedan and demonstrate the new Dark Friar ability, which I think is the best ability in the game. It's the most useful one, and it's also why Friedan is my favorite character. You get a third character later on, and he's pretty powerful too. He's no slouch. And he looks pretty cool, but still, hands down, Friedan is my favorite, and that's just all there is to it. So anyway, the third enemy, we dealt with spiders, we dealt with skulls, now we have Flute Boy, which he wasn't on screen for long, so I annihilated him with the new Dark Friar ability. Not only does it shoot a blast, when it contacts an enemy, it splits into 4 other blasts that spin around in a circle until they leave the screen, which is devastating and amazing, and it one-shots dudes like crazy. So very awesome ability. So the Flute Boy, when I was a child, he was extremely difficult and extremely annoying. Number one, I was lost inside mt.kress, and I was playing as Will, and Will doesn't have any projectile attacks. All his attacks are melee, and the flute guy, what he does is, when he gets on screen, if you don't take him out immediately, as he plays on his flute, he summons blue flames that circle his body, and I think he can shoot them out too, kind of like your Dark Friar ability. And they take a lot out, and sometimes there could be more than one, and you can have the screen, if you're not careful, you can have the whole screen filled up with blue flames and from the flute guys. And plus, they're one of those annoying enemies that they can be off screen and still shoot stuff on screen. Like they're still on the same screen as you, but they're just slightly off and you can't reach them. So anyway, thank y'all for watching. Stay tuned for the next part where we get some more into Mount Cress. I'm your host, Raven, and y'all have a good day.